pleasure to see so many of you on this beautiful evening for what looks set to be an incredible event for us all, on lots of topics and interesting discussions ahead. Just to let you know, my name is Pamela Kemba-Tong. I'm the Head of Arts and Learning at Asia House. I just wanted to say my role this evening is not just only to welcome you all, but to say how incredibly excited we all are to co-host this event with Don Sloan at Oxford Cultural Collective. It's an ongoing series, and we've had some really fascinating discussions, but also amazing panels, and certainly tonight is no exception. I'm going to leave Don Sloan to introduce everybody to you on the panel, but just briefly, I'd like to thank Lee Kum Kee for their generous support for this evening's event, and also our wonderful chef, Paul Bloomfield, for the incredible menu that you will see on your seats, which we look forward to in the reception following the discussion. The conversation will be for about 45 minutes, and then a Q&A for 10 and 15 minutes, and then we'll move the chairs around in the other room, and we'll bring the canapes and drinks for us all to enjoy. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. In the unlikely event of the fire alarms going off, please just calmly take yourselves down the stairs, please not use the list, and we just go to Weymouth Mews round the corner. It has never happened, and I'm sure it won't. Lucky night, July the 4th, for some of us. Anyway, so that's really the important thing. And then if you could please ensure you've turned off your mobile phones. I know everybody thinks they have. But do please feel free to tweet away if you'd like to, and I'll give you our Wi-Fi code, which is Asia House, capital A, capital H, 2019, and an exclamation mark. I'm going to hand over to Don now to take the proceedings forward. I just wanted to say as well, on this July 4th, because looking up the idea of Independence Day, but I didn't know myself, and probably some of you can tell me, but the earliest form of pyrotechnics actually originated in China 2,000 years ago, when people were said to have roasted bamboo stalks, that they would turn black and sizzle, and the air inside the hollow stalks would explode. Hence, bao jiu, meaning exploding bamboo. So there we are. But thankfully, we have no bao jiu tonight, but we certainly have some hot, spicy, and sizzling dishes from conversation. So, all that later. Please welcome Don and our guests for this evening.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Pamela, and thank you for that explosive start. Sorry. We pride ourselves on being really organised with these events, and then about an hour and a half ago we discovered that we'd set two different start dates. So thank you very much. Start times, sorry, one at 6:30 and one at 6:45. So thank you for your patience, those who came for a 6:30 start. Tonight we are discussing Chinese cuisine. Does cultural authenticity matter? Potentially quite a controversial topic. And we have the perfect panel to address this issue. First of all, on my immediate right, it's my pleasure to introduce Fuchsia Dunlop, who is an award-winning cook and food writer, as you know, specialising in Chinese cuisine. She is the author of 6 books, her latest being Land of Fish and Rice, Recipes from the Culinary Heart of China. She writes for many other publications, including regularly for the Financial Times, and luckily for us, she is considered a leading authority on matters relating to Chinese culinary culture. Mukta Das, on the far left, has lived and studied in China and across East Asia. She is very relieved because she recently completed her doctorate at SOAS, and she was specialising in the Silk Road trade and the movement of people, and how that has affected the evolution of Chinese cuisine. So perfect for this particular discussion, this particular panel. On my far right, Andrew Wong, who will be familiar to many of you. Andrew is the chef proprietor of restaurant A Wong near Victoria and Kim's in Bloomsbury Arcade. Andrew opened A Wong in 2012, and it really took London by storm. A new, fresh take on Chinese cuisine, and it got the city talking, quite rightly earned a Michelin star, and consistently high rankings in restaurant rankings in the UK and internationally. Welcome, Andrew. And our final speaker on my immediate left, Jeremy Chan. Jeremy is chef proprietor of Cuisine in St James, central London, which he opened in 2017. It rapidly became the most talked about restaurant in the London scene. He started with a career in finance, but decided, I think, that he wanted to be more creative. So he trained under Rennie Redzepi at Noma, at Hibiscus, and also at Dinner by Heston Blumenthal, and then, as I say, broke out on his own in 2017. Now, interestingly, Jeremy is of Canadian Chinese origin. He cooks food that is inspired to an extent by West African flavours. And I think that qualifies him to talk about matters relating to cultural authenticity and cuisine. So welcome all. Now, we thought what we would do to get the ball rolling is, rather than launching straight into questions, I'm going to invite Fuchsia to say a few words to set the scene and just to give us a sense of some of the main issues around cultural authenticity as it relates to Chinese cuisine. So Fuchsia, I'll pass over to you first.
Thank you, John. So Chinese cuisine, does cultural authenticity matter? And I think the short answer is that it totally depends on the context. But firstly, the whole concept of cultural authenticity is notoriously slippery, and particularly with regard to food, because cuisines are living, shifting, constantly evolving forms of cultural expression. You cannot be too conservative about food. The ways that in which people cook are always affected by context, by what's available to them, who they're cooking for, who is cooking. What's important in everyday life is that people are fed, and not some frozen notion of cultural authenticity. Much of the great food of the world is the result of fusion and adaptation. Italian cooking with tomatoes, from the Americas, the Nyonya cooking of the Peranakan Chinese of Penang in Malaysia with Chinese, Malay and Thai influences, Japanese cooking, ramen from China, tempura from Portuguese. And within Chinese cuisine, I think one perfect example of the problems of defining authenticity is General Tso's chicken. It's become more famous through the documentary The Search for General Tso, but I know it's not very well known in Britain. But this is the most famous Hunanese dish in America, particularly on the East Coast. When I went to live in Hunan about 15 years ago to research a Hunan cookbook, I was amazed to find that no one in Hunan ever ate it, or ever heard of it. And over a long sort of period of research, it turned out that this famous Hunan dish was invented by a famous Hunan chef who fled to Taiwan in 1949. He developed it when he was working up state banquets in Taiwan, and then it went to America through him and other chefs, where they adapted a dish that had been inspired by Hunanese flavors, hot and sour tastes, but sweetening it for American tastes. So this is a dish which is the most famous Hunanese dish in America, but is unknown in its supposed place of origin. And I had this very interesting dilemma when writing a Hunan cookbook. Should I include this dish? Is this an authentic dish? And I just ended up coming to the conclusion that, of course, it wasn't authentic in the sense that dishes that people ate in the Hunan countryside using ingredients and seasonings they've been using for hundreds or even thousands of years, but it expressed a different kind of authenticity. It told a different story about the Chinese diaspora, the Chinese Civil War, the way that cuisines migrate and change and adapt. So I decided to put it in the book. But I think this is just an example of the problems of authenticity. Another very good example is Sichuanese cuisine, so famous now. But the actual, what is authentic Sichuanese cuisine? And what we know as authentic Sichuanese cuisine is really a fairly recent construct. The chili only came from the Americas and only really settled in Sichuan about 200 years ago. Even in China, the concepts of the 4 great cuisines and the 8 great cuisines are very recent. They only started really to be widely used in the 1980s, and it was only sort of the 50s and 60s that there was this great effort to sort of compile regional cookbooks and so on. Much of today's Sichuanese cuisine actually came from other parts of China, So, I mean, the chili was a Mexican import. The doubanjiang, the chili paste, was invented by a migrant from Fujian, a very different region in China. The famous Baoning vinegar was brought from northern China by someone else. It's constantly evolved. Even the Sichuanese cuisine that I knew when I was first there 25 years ago has changed a lot. There are dishes that have gone out of fashion. Now if you go and have dinner in Chengdu, the Sichuanese capital, you will very likely come across dishes made with okra, stir-fried okra using Sichuanese seasonings, and also ice plant or ice grass. Do you know that crunchy salad vegetable which looks as though it has little specks of ice on its leaves? And these two ingredients, ubiquitous now in Sichuan, unknown 3 years ago. You know, cuisines are always changing. Cuisines are a sort of mash-up form of culture which is constantly responding to new influences. And the other issue with authenticity is, you know, who gets to say what's authentic? You know, there are great controversies over what is the authentic form of this dish and that dish all over the world. And I think with China, it's a very interesting example because, you know, Chineseness and Chinese cuisine is an absolutely huge sort of church, if you like. Yeah, and there are, apart from the regional differences within China, there's also a great difference between Chinese mainland, diaspora, you know, Taiwan. And I remember the recent controversy over Gordon Ramsay's Lucky Cat restaurant, which I'll say a bit more about in a moment. I was discussing this with a mainland Chinese friend in London, discussing the controversy, and she felt that she was quite relaxed about it, and she felt that there was a lot more sort of emotional attachment to notions of authenticity among overseas Chinese than among, you know, people, her contemporaries who grew up in China, and they didn't really care if people were sort of mashing up their cuisine. That was her view. And I just wanted to actually, the great Chengdu chef Lan Guijun, who runs a little private restaurant in Chengdu, he once said to me, I'm from Sichuan, so whatever I cook is Sichuanese. And today's invention is tomorrow's tradition anyway. So he's someone who's absolutely well-versed in traditional culinary techniques and flavors, and is what you might call a very authentic Sichuanese chef, but he's also constantly innovating, and some of his dishes might seem even a bit westernized. So I thought his perspective was very interesting. So that's a little bit about the whole notion of authenticity. But to go back to it, also the context is very important. You know, does cultural authenticity matter? So, you know, the early Chinese immigrants to California opened restaurants, and they tried to offer dishes that were acceptable to local palates at the time. And they served things like chop suey and, you know, also westernized food mixed in with sort of very heavily adapted Chinese food with its roots in Cantonese cookery. But, you know, clearly at that time, if Chinese restaurants, Cantonese immigrants, if they had served things like only pork lung soup and sea cucumber, they wouldn't have made a living. And, you know, the considerations for them were purely practical. And there's nothing wrong with this. You know, they created a kind of Chinese food called American Chinese food, which is still very popular, and it was a response to particular circumstances. Not authentic if you're talking about it with reference to the way things are done in particular parts of China, but there's nothing wrong with that. And just from a personal perspective, these days I cook mainly Chinese food at home, and I'm very relaxed about it. So today for breakfast I had a sort of Chinese-English breakfast. I had fried egg and tomato with Chinese wind-dried sausage. And, you know, I do things like, you know, if I'm making roast lamb, it is really excellent with spicy fermented tofu, which is, you know, there's a very lovely Cantonese stew which you eat with fermented tofu. And every Christmas on Boxing Day, I use the leftover roast turkey to make a Sichuanese liang ban ti, I mean, a sort of spicy turkey salad. So in my own approach, it's just very free and easy, and I'm creative, and just, I don't care about authenticity. But I'm in the very strange position of being an English woman who's attempting to write books about Chinese food. So I would say that in my work, I hold myself to a very strict standard of authenticity, which I know sounds completely contradictory, but But I think that authenticity in some contexts can be a very useful concept. And because I'm English, I cannot, like the chef in Wei Jun, I can't say whatever I cook is Chinese. I'm not Chinese. So the thing that I can offer my readers is to say, to try and bring sort of values of respect and accuracy and research, sort of academic and journalistic values to my reporting about Chinese food, and say to my readers, I'm doing my best in good faith to report accurately on what I find in China, and that's what I can do, I think, as an outsider. And so, yeah, good sources, fact-checking, attribution, that kind of thing. So if I develop and publish a recipe for mapo tofu, for example, I'm not trying to be creative and adaptable. I'm trying to totally respect my sources, and I'm trying to report back to English readers about what I find in China. Having said that, there is not one single recipe for mapo tofu, so there's a bit of, I have to think about how to do that. Yeah, so I think what's important is to be sort of very honest and clear about what one is doing and where one is adapting and so on. But I think in that sense, cultural authenticity can be a useful concept. And I think just in the current debate, hot debate about cultural appropriation and authenticity, I think what makes people angry is not really authenticity in a narrow sense. What makes people angry is making dubious claims about authenticity. So, with reference to the controversy over Gordon Ramsay's Lucky Cat restaurant, what irked people quite reasonably was the initial claim that this was going to be an authentic Asian eating house. And it was, the justification was that the chef had made a few trips to Asia. But I think that what annoyed people was this idea that it was being marketed as something authentic, not that Gordon Ramsay was opening a restaurant that was doing a kind of mashup of Asian and other influences. So this was really a sort of example of rather tone-deaf presentation and PR, rather than saying that the food has to be authentic. And the other thing that makes people angry is sort of ignorance and cultural illiteracy. So, for example, again with this the Lucky Cat restaurant, the blurring of a very vast and culturally diverse region into Asia. And Angela Hui, the journalist who wrote this very influential blog post about it, said, Japanese, Chinese, it's all Asian, who cares? And this was seen as being very disrespectful. And I think that, realistically, it is impossible to be an expert on everything. But if you're going to call something Asian or Chinese or Japanese, you have a responsibility to inform yourself and to sort of know what you're talking about. If you want to put something called Peking duck on your menu, you should know what Peking duck is, and you should sort of have some justification for why you think it deserves this name. And the other thing is when there's a lack of respect in cultural authenticity, and this is another recent example of Lucky Lee's, a Chinese restaurant in New York, which was opened by a white American woman, and initially boasted that it was going to offer clean and healthy Chinese food that would, and I'm roughly quoting, slightly paraphrasing, but a healthy Chinese food that would actually make customers feel good rather than bloated and icky the next day. Which was, clearly not only offensive to imply that normal, regular Chinese food was unhealthy, but also ridiculous because the Chinese understand in general far more about healthy eating than Americans. But it was the presentation of this that was very sort of crass. And there are also economic aspects, like why should a white person, often male, be able to make lots of money by selling something that claims to be authentic Chinese food, rather than a lowly Chinese immigrant who's been doing it all their life. So all these issues understandably sort of annoy people from the cultures that are being packaged and marketed by outsiders in insensitive ways. But I should also say that in terms of just presentation and sort of authenticity, that I also see this from the other point of view in China, and China also has quite a long tradition of totally inauthentic Western food. Like if you go to Shanghai, what's it called, but the Deda Western food restaurant in Shanghai, which was founded in about 1890 something. And it's a Western food restaurant serving a very, very outdated and curiously curated Shanghainese idea about what Western food is. So you go there and you have a sort of like a schnitzel made of pork, and you have potato salad, which is from the Olivier salad from the Russians, white Russians, and a version of also kind of Russian soup, which is borscht made not with beetroot, because there isn't any beetroot there, but made with cabbage and beef and so on. So that's, that's inauthentic Chinese Western food. And now, I hear constantly, outrageous, dismissive generalizations about Western food by my Chinese friends, like typically 西餐很简单很单调. Western food is very simple and very monotonous. The English don't have anything good to eat, it's just fish and chips. So I think that, it's just a matter, it's partly a matter of sensitivity and access, access to other cultures and experience. And but it's just, I think I have a certain lightness about this because I see that it goes both ways. So to go back to the original question about does cultural authenticity matter when it comes to Chinese cuisine, I do think it's a bit of a red herring. I think it can be a useful concept in some contexts with the caveats that I've mentioned above, and it can also be completely irrelevant when you're just talking about nice food and people being fed. But the problem is just when the idea of cultural authenticity is taken too seriously or misused to make claims for marketing purposes. And that actually, when we talk about cultural authenticity, we're actually often talking about other more important questions about honesty and representation of minorities and respect for other cultures.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you, Felicia. I think that's what a perfect scene setter, actually, and touches on a number of issues that I'm sure we'll get into in more detail with our other panellists. But one of the recurring themes there, which I'd like to start with you, one of the recurring themes there seemed to be this idea that cuisine is, whatever cuisine, but in this context, Chinese cuisine is constantly evolving. There's not something that is set in aspect, set in time, that we can say, there it is, that is authentic, it doesn't move on. Now, your research particularly focused on contextual influences on Chinese cuisine. Can you just tell us briefly, don't summarize your PhD, but just a little bit about this idea that cuisine is constantly evolving because of things like trade and movement of people and so on?
Absolutely. Okay, sure. In a couple of minutes,
Yeah,
I'll try and summarize.
yeah.
And I don't want to cover ground that Future has already said about certain types of commodities that came into China at certain times. But basically, we're talking about a country who has been trading and expanding since, for the last 2,500 years, right? So the Han's team onwards. We're looking at a culture, or cultures, as we've come to look at it in the academic world, kind of bringing in new ideas and adapting, right? And so what I've been looking at really is how this idea of ordinary Chinese food is then kind of broadened out and made quite complicated. And what do we mean by Chinese food, right? Do we mean Han food, or do we mean like the whole of China? Is it coterminous? Is it the same as the borders of China, or are we looking at the kind of cuisines that are made in the diaspora? Right, so it's a really broad category, and so of course, yes, absolutely, it moves about, it expands, it retracts, and even I think this is a big question for China. It's been a big question for China since unification. You know what I mean? Since 2,500 years ago, what is Chinese about China? And so, bringing it back to what we're talking about here, this idea of Chineseness has been a big question for cultural elites, political elites, for the last 2,500 years, and it's still a burning and relevant question when we think about, the kind of cultural, if you like, cultural tools that people have to sort of look at themselves as unified peoples. And we're quite hesitant, I think, in the academic world to say culture as a singular term. We think about culture as very, very diverse, very plural. And so it really complicates this idea of Chinese cuisine, because we're not talking about the one kind.
We often we talk rather glibly about cuisine being a very powerful communicator of culture, whatever culture might be. In your fieldwork, were you aware that people in particular regions had a very set view themselves of what constituted authentic cuisine, as in what represented them honestly?
I think Fuchsia would agree that yes, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about what should be eaten,
Yes.
at what time, if you're a woman, and all sorts of things. There's a lot of advice happening as well. There's a lot of representation, and absolutely, and of course, even if you consider yourself, a majority Han person, you have dialect groups, you have surname associations, you have Jiguan, or you have Jiaxing, but you have so many different ways of identifying yourself that inevitably you're going to be comparing and contrasting. Even in Shanghai, you've got like the Wu dialect group who are dominant. When we talk about Shanghai food, we're talking about really their food. But then there are Suzhou or other people who might not be as represented. So everybody has an opinion about themselves, where they're from, what dialect they're speaking, what surname, a place they're from, what hometown they're from. And these are really, really special foods that grow up. They are very dear to them.
And identify their character and yeah.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting that we can see theoretically over time, we might understand that cuisines change, that they're influenced in the ways you've described, but at a micro level we're not aware of that change, and we are rooted to what is of the moment in a sense. We've got two chefs on the panel who you could say are not only chefs, but are also cultural communicators in their own right. Andrew, if I could turn to you first of all. As I understand it, before you opened A1 a few years ago, you actually took yourself off to China. You had studied anthropology conveniently before. You went and immersed yourself in supposedly, okay. You went and, I guess, immersed yourself in Chinese culture, and obviously a learning process. But was that a deliberate attempt to seek out the authentic and bring it back and to represent it in the restaurant you were going to open?
So much has been covered already.
Yeah.
I think first of all we have to address one thing, right? Which is basically everyone who is sitting in this room, you only account for 0.0000001% of the general demographic of people's understanding of China and Chinese food in the UK. And it's very easy to forget that. Because you're here, you already have so much more interest. There's so many more people. You have to take yourself out of this little bubble, and you have to understand there are a lot of people in the UK who have a lot less knowledge about China, about Southeast Asia, about Chinese food, about Chinese history, about Chinese anthropology. And that's very, very important to remember this. I know it might sound a bit trivial, but actually as chefs, we are communicating, but we're not just communicating to you, because you don't make up enough to make me pay my bills. My kids don't have any clothes that I'm going to cater for others. Back to your original point, I remember before I went traveling, I used to pick up Fuchsia's books, and I said, Fuchsia's probably more Chinese than me. And you know what? It's shameful to say it like back in the day, but actually, as I've travelled more in China and I've read more Fuchsia's books, I've read other people's books, and I've worked at Mutta and I've learned more about China. Actually, you realise that that's the reality of it. You cannot own culture and you cannot own food. Anyone who claims they can own food and own culture is slightly misinformed. In the restaurant, I always say, I'm not an expert of Chinese food. I'm an expert of A1's Chinese food. That's all I can claim to be. So what do? We try to use food to basically create interest in China as a whole, in Chinese history, in Chinese culture. And it's taken a long time to get there. So, when we first opened the restaurant, it was very much about, I tried this dish here, and I'm going to try and recreate it in London. and I try this dish here, and I try to recreate it in London. And of course, actually, even if I recreate it exactly how it was there, you're always going to tell me, oh, when I was in China, but just remember one other thing, actually. When you're in China, you're not just tasting food from a completely objective view. You're tasting food from the fact that you're on holiday. You're feeling exotic, you're loosened up, you're in a vibe, right? Maybe you've been to a few karaoke bars, and it's the same when you go to vineyards, right? You go to a vineyard, you taste this wine, oh yeah, I can smell oak, I can smell like grassy things, and then you buy like 3 crates of it, you take it home, and it tastes like absolute piss. And this is very much the important considerations to make. So, as a restaurant, it's taken a long time to accept that we can no longer do that, in the sense that we can no longer just take things, because that, in a sense, that's not authentic either, because China is changing in the future, and what rightly said. You go to Beijing now, you go to Hong Kong now, things are massively different to 10, 15 years ago in the cuisine. And you can't keep on chasing, because actually, if you look at a lot of top chefs that we do work with in Hong Kong, for example, they look at the West for inspiration for their own dishes. So actually, if you start copying them as well, all you're going to do is go backwards and forwards, and before you know it, it's just going to be fish and chips everywhere. So
we're doing our absolute damnedest here to trash the whole notion of authenticity. I love it, it's fantastic. One other question though, for you, Andrew. I mean, consumers talk more and more about authenticity these days. They're all searching for that elusive thing that is authentic Chinese cuisine. Do you find that they're coming to your restaurant and they're looking to you for reassurance that what you're providing them with, forget what it means, but they're looking for this mysterious, authentic thing that is Andrew Wong's Chinese cuisine?
This is going to sound really controversial, right? But actually, staff meetings, we always talk about complaints and what people have said about this and the other. And the only conclusion I can really come to is when people come to our restaurant, they are not looking for authenticity in inverted commas. What they're looking for is something that can be ammunition for them for when they go out to talk to their friends, to say that, oh, I know something you don't know. That's ultimately what it comes down to. You're in a pub and they're like, oh yes, this, that. Well, did you know that, in Xinjiang, makes up 1/3 of the country, the predominant religion is Muslim, therefore they don't eat pork. Did you know that the word for pork in Chinese is a general word for meat? That's what they really want. They just want they want to elevate themselves to collect ammunition for later on when they're in the pub. That's really what it is. And it makes them feel reassured that they know something and they feel a little bit superior, and therefore they're a little bit more comfortable in their own skin, that they know a little bit more and they feel a little bit more cultured and they feel a little, more intelligent.
He's off on one. Now, before I turn to Jeremy, I think you're just going to leap in there.
Just about this thing about authenticity of experiences, and I think that's partly because we're all bombarded all the time with fake stories trying to sell things as being authentic, that aren't, which are just concocted. So what people are wanting is something that feels more heartfelt and connected to people and places.
So it doesn't matter whether it's real or not, it's the perception of and the...
Or just something that's not part of a corporate spiel, but feels more human and real and culturally connected. What do you say?
Right, Jeremy, turning to you, I mean, obviously you're not engaged with Chinese cuisine, but the reason I was really keen to have you here is because you take quite a different approach, as far as I can see. A lot of, I mentioned cultural communication earlier, a lot of chefs might see themselves as representing a particular culture or communicating about a particular culture to others. For those of you that haven't dined in Ikoyi, the food is remarkable, the food is incredibly precise, the food is aesthetically astonishing, full of flavour, and I can guarantee unlike anything you will have experienced elsewhere. And it also seems, if this is fair, Jeremy, to be almost without borders, although you draw inspiration from West Africa. Can you tell us a bit about your distinct approach in that respect?
So it's interesting what you're saying about authenticity, and it's rooted in what you claim to be, what symbols represent you, how you position yourself as a restaurant, as a chef, what your intentions are. When you open a restaurant, you really have like one shot when you open it to kind of put it out there to get people to come. And you can't really put something out there that people kind of can misinterpret and can't really understand. So basically, I had nothing to do with my life. And my Nigerian friend asked me, do you want to open a restaurant? So I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I went to the British Library and I just analysed everything that was edible from Sub-Saharan West Africa. And then I made a list of ingredients, and then I went to Peckham, which is where I live, and I just started going to different markets there, buying ingredients. And I started tasting things, and I was like, this huge like wealth of flavour and like community people here, and they have their own cuisine, they have their own traditional way of doing things, but this stuff inspires me to make delicious food and to make friendships with these people and to start something new. So I just started deep thinking about ingredients and started thinking, how can I make something innovative and super delicious, but also like when people kind of relate to my food, hopefully this familiarity with the food, but also something completely new and alien. So going back to this idea of authenticity, when we opened the restaurant, I couldn't really call it a restaurant about ingredients analysis, which uses a lot of ingredients from Sub-Saharan West Africa. It also uses
not too catchy, you know.
Like, where does inspiration come from? My inspiration comes from growing up in Hong Kong, in Beijing, in Canada. Like a lot of the textures and flavors in my food are based in Cantonese cuisine, but when you eat my food, it doesn't remind you anything of Cantonese cuisine. So maybe I should have made the claim when I opened it that it's a modern Chinese restaurant. Which is what sometimes I got angry at people because they were like, basically journalists in the UK knew that we were using West African ingredients, so it immediately became a West African restaurant, which is not what it is. I just took it down from Google because the other day, customers said, Google says you're a West African restaurant. I don't say it's a West African restaurant. I never made the claim. I just used some ingredients from that region, and it happens to be new. Just because you don't know anything about West African food doesn't mean the first thing that you eat that contains a West African ingredient happens to be representative of that cuisine. So what I do is I think of the ingredients in the vacuum. I like deculturalize all the ingredients. That way I don't have to read a recipe from someone in West Africa or Nigeria to see how they cook it. Because that would be me trying to emulate or like imitate a pre-existing tradition, which is a different project, it's a different restaurant. That's a restaurant trying to modernize African food. What I'm trying to do is react instinctively to ingredients and see if they have applications for deliciousness. That's it.
So it seems to run counter to our general understanding of the categorization of restaurants. I mean, have you found that there's confusion, not necessarily a bad thing, but is there confusion amongst your guests as to what actually you are?
Yeah, I think now it's a restaurant that celebrates creativity and open-mindedness. Like our approach to service, to food, and to culture is like, let's just embrace everything and embrace everyone and see what we can learn. It's about keeping an open mind. And this just sounds like a very like vague idea. It's really hard to communicate. So when people ask me what kind of food is it, I say it's just tasty food. But if they say where's the inspiration from, we can get into that conversation. But it's like, do you really want to hear that I read an article on fractal geometry in ancient African art, and I find the kind of futuristic aesthetics of that idea like applicable to the design of the plate, maybe. But you know what I mean? It's like this is kind of conversation.
So when we later on get into the discussion about silos and shutting yourself into particular boxes, I think it'll be very interesting to hear from someone who has broken out in that respect. We've been talking so far about how Chinese cuisine might change over time, contextual influences, but also this search for the elusive authenticity future. But there may also be something going on in China which is about the rejection of the authentic and the move towards highly processed, highly industrial processed, fast food and so on. I mean, I was shocked to read again recently about levels of obesity, for example, in China, outstripping those of the USA. I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but do you think something is going on that might undermine that sense of connection to the authentic? And is that causing great concern when you're traveling in China? Do you see this?
Yeah, I mean, the pace of change is utterly unbelievable. Like when I was living in Sichuan 25 years ago, there was no Western food, there were no supermarkets, everyone shopped in fresh markets. Everyone ate something that at the time was recognizable as authentic Sichuanese food. So that's all changed, and it's partly a kind of rather wonderful opening up and a sudden, encounters with other cultures. So
Yes,
people,
nothing wrong.
yeah, and sort of, people tasting cuisines from all over China and from abroad and mixing it up. And one thing that struck me on the last visit to Chengdu was the Chengdu people who had no Western cakes, like, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, are now doing the most heavenly patisserie, kind of better than in Paris, in like hardly any time. But so all this is happening, and yes, people are eating more packaged food. One thing that I find terribly sad is that a lot of my friends of the older generation, they can all make mapo tofu, dry fried beans, or they can make their own pickles and cure their own meats. And my younger friends, they don't cook, they go out to eat and they just, photograph it on WeChat and all this sort of thing. But I think that what's interesting in China is all this is happening and the Chinese are going like crazy down all the terrible paths we've gone down. But at the same time, people are getting more interested in their food culture as heritage, as culture, as something very important. And in particular, there was the great TV series, A Bite of China, which brought all these amazing footage of food processes and artisans and traditional foods, and has made people very interested. So I would say at the same time there's a movement of sort of like cultural food tourism. So when people in China go on holiday, they want to taste traditional food, and what they really want is artisanal food, which is getting harder to find. But again, the appetite of middle-class consumers for it gives hope to the sort of rural artisans who make things, I hope. But yeah, so it's...
Is this something you've witnessed on your travels? I mean, you've been writing from a historical perspective. Where you connect, yes. And so have you seen a sense of loss leading to a sense of longing for heritage expressed through food?
Absolutely, agree with Fuchsia 100%. It happens simultaneously, right?
Yes.
Tradition of the draw was very important, I think, in this movement. And actually, but it's been happening since the 80s, right? So you've had markets opening up, you've had more migration into cities, out of China. And so what you have are people who, going back to this hometown feel, want products from their locality, and regional authorities and political elites and companies now, privately owned companies, are kind of gearing up to producing these sorts of products in a mass market way, so that you can go to Hunan and buy something that is outside from the outskirts of Beijing, and it's got the beautiful not writing, it has pictures, it's nostalgic as well. So because of this modernity, there's this turn back to tradition in this kind of way, but it's not traditional but completely artisanal. It's a tradition that has that, but also is much more branded, marketed, much more kind of modern in its formulations, packaged, sold abroad. It's a modern artisanal movement as well as
Okay. That makes sense. And Andrew, picking up on this with you, we're talking here about changing tastes, changing attitudes, people searching for the new and notions of what constitutes the authentic changing. I mean, in turning to the UK again, in the UK, Chinese food has been a very important part of British culture for a long time, and Chinese restaurants have been very important in British life for many decades. Is there a sense that what you did when you opened A Wong, you came along and you did something that had a sense of being fresh and being different and challenging maybe what our perceptions of Chinese cuisine, authentic Chinese cuisine, have been, albeit, as Fuchsia said, that might have been a British version of Chinese or Cantonese cuisine. I mean, have you caused any sort of upset within the community of Chinese restaurateurs because you're seen to be doing something that's moving something forward? I'm sorry to ask two questions at once, but do you think change was required? Do you think that the Chinese restaurant sector in the UK has been too static and not responsive enough to changing tastes and so on?
First of all, you put it in the perspective, right? So the earliest eateries, Chinese eateries, probably late 1800s, the first official Chinese restaurant was 1908. So actually, as a country, the UK have got a really, really, really strong relationship and bond with Chinese food. When you open a restaurant, you do not think 7 years down the road someone will invite you to come and talk about this topic in a restaurant. you know, you just kind of hope you open the door, your wife's outside, like looking after the guests, you cook some food, just hope you get a few customers. And it's like an organic thing, right? You cook some food, people say it's good, people say it's crap, and then you change it, and then you change it. It's a very organic evolution. And you know, you try your best to be true to who you are, you try your best to be true to the semi-message that you've got kind of changing and constantly evolving in your head. And most of all, you try to be respectful to who you are and what your culture is. You know, with regards to the changing scene of what we perceive to be Chinese, I tell you the biggest thing that's going to happen in the next few years is that across China, paddy fields are turning into potato crops. And so now, you know, that ongoing joke that, oh, you know, that Chinese takeaway that serves chips, that's going to become a reality very, very soon. And that is the reality of cuisine. It starts off as something political, so the government decides to do something. Down the line, 15 years down the line, it will filter through. Now, our job as chefs is basically, or my job as a chef at A1, is just to get people to start a conversation. I can't do any more than that because, as I said, I'm not an expert on Chinese food. All I can do is try my best, work hard, make sure keeps me on track in making sure I don't go too left field or too right field, and make sure there's kind of like historical backing up behind what we consider and what we want to do. And ultimately, all we want to do is get to come into the restaurant, eat food that we hope they think is delicious, and from that, start a conversation about China, about Chinese cuisine, about Chinese gastronomy, about Chinese culture.
Okay. Now, Moti, you hinted earlier on at this idea of, despite the difficulty of defining authenticity, that cuisine very much defines who we are. We like to hold on to something that we feel is authentically us and its expression through food. And of course, that inevitably brings us on to this notion of cultural appropriation, which you mentioned earlier, Fuchsia. I'm interested to know just briefly, you made the point yourself that despite your rigorous approach that you adopt and you report back rather than owning and changing and so on, have you faced in your career any negative feelings from others or any challenges of your legitimacy because of your cultural background?
Well, I would say that in China itself, my experience has been a complete support and encouragement.
Yeah.
Because I think people see what it is kind of complementary to what they do. And I would say in my experience of being abroad, that I think that sometimes people are prejudiced against the idea of me by this English woman and my Chinese food. And in fact, for example, there's a young Chinese woman in London who I met at a dinner party, who she messaged me a couple of weeks afterwards and said, you know, I have to admit I was seriously skeptical and a bit irritated when I heard you were writing about Chinese food, but she bought one of my books, this food memoir, and she loved it so much that she sent me a present in the post. And so, yeah, I would say people are skeptical, as I would be, but no, I've been quite.
As you should be. What this gets us is that sense of treading into other people's territory and whether or not that's legitimate or not. And Jeremy, you said that there has been a misperception that you have a West African restaurant, but kind of turning it on its head, have people been upset with you for treading in that territory, and how do they feel once they realise they've got it wrong and that's not?
I had a lot of one-star reviews on TripAdvisor saying, why is there a Chinese cook in an African restaurant? We should get rid of him and put a real black chef in. And I kind of just upset me a bit, and it kind of fueled my passion to be more creative with ingredients. And where I dealt with it was just by being patient and explaining to people how much I love the ingredients and how I want to do great things with them. And for me, using new ingredients and creating mutual understanding with communities that otherwise we would never speak to is only a positive thing. The only positive things have come from that. But sorry,
No, you're answering me. You're sort of finding your way a bit like Fuchsia. Once people get to know what you do,
yeah.
relax and don't worry so much about the territory that you're occupying. I mean, Moten, part of this, I think Fuchsia hinted at this in an introduction, part of this seems to be about whose voice is legitimate. And very understandably, if we hold something dear to ourselves and we see somebody else trying to own it or misinterpret it in our eyes, we might get very upset. And the visceral nature of the debate over the last year or so would suggest that this is what is going on. But how do we decide whose voice is legitimate in all of this, would you say? No. You're asking the same thing, if you should say. Yeah. Do you have to be immersed in that culture, or can you come to it late? Can we what?
Well, I mean, I have a very flexible view of these things, because actually, at the end of the day, I do feel sometimes, me personally, I'm over-identified by my race, right? So people will come to me and say, oh, you're interested in food, what do you think about this Indian restaurant? Or can you recommend me five of your greatest Indian restaurants? And I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm Indian, but, you know, fair enough. You go and explore. I've seen this on Instagram, right? I'm literally that uninterested in Indian food, right? It doesn't matter to me. Actually, what matters to me is just Chinese food history, Chinese food anthropology. And so my interest is taking me away from my racial package, if you like. And so legitimacy, illegitimacy, and I'm kind of backed up by all these anthropologists where I work, but basically, you know, you're chasing something. Legitimacy, you're chasing something that doesn't really exist, right? And, you know, I think there's a racial connotation, and you've got to be able to look at people as more than that, right? You know, I'm also a woman. I'm also, you know, well, and I'm also, you know, I have a lot of different identities, and so, you know, am I legitimate because I'm Indian and studying British Indian, I would say, and studying Chinese food? I don't know. You know, I can only go with my interest and my passion.
I mean, Fuchsia, you introduced this topic earlier on. Is there potentially, without getting into too much hot water, is there a form of cultural arrogance at play here that doesn't allow others to step into territory that, for whatever reason, we might not assume they can legitimately be part of?
I think there is a very important and legitimate issue about representation, because in a multi-ethnic society, it's not fair if all the people who are speaking in media and writing books are of a certain type of the dominant race, and that's what it's really about. But I don't think the solution is to say that, you know, if you're Chinese, you're pigeonholed in Chinese food, and if I'm Indian, like I had a similar experience to Victor, a Chinese food scholar friend sat me down in Chengdu and said she prepared a whole lot of questions for me about English food. I could not answer one of them.
Yeah.
They were all about the history of things, and there's a difference between the sort of emotional connection that you have with the way your mother and grandmother cooked, and that relationship with the cuisine, which I don't have with Chinese cuisine, and sort of expertise, which comes from passionate exploration and research, and they're two separate things. And sort of, I also kind of really believe that it's important for people to learn foreign languages, immerse themselves in other cultures, fall in love with other cultures, and just break down boundaries. I think it's important for all of us, and it helps create respect, which is what this is
And what we
about.
might be doing is retreating into silos in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The debate both in social media and in the national press has gained a lot of attention, and it's polarising. It's quite sensationalist. It's probably lacks nuance of the type that you are bringing to the conversation. How do we take the sting out of this? I mean, how do we actually get people to understand the complexities of this rather than just shouting from one camp to another? If you want to.
Yeah, listening. When people are upset about something, really listening. Like, why are they upset? And there's a whole lot of historical reasons to do with racism and things, which everyone needs to understand. So that's one thing. And I also think humour, and sort of trying to look at things from different perspectives. So like with me, I'm always trying to look at things from other point of view. So for example, you know, bastardise Chinese food and then bastardise Western food in China, this sort of thing. And I think that when the debate gets very angry, it can just alienate people. If you say to someone, you're bad and you're racist, and that, it's not necessarily helpful. You want to bring people along and explain why this is an issue and why it's sensitive, and win people over in a friendly way. You know, and I think that that's, and as I said before, I think that some of the sort of issues come about through thoughtlessness and insensitivity rather than deliberate offence, like this New York restaurant. And the woman who caused offence by talking about clean Chinese food was kind of mortified. She just hadn't thought about
It
it.
wasn't intentional.
Well, no, she was very apologetic, and I think that when people are genuinely listen and apologetic and, you know, in good faith, then, you know, give them another chance, encourage them, you know, let's be nice about it.
Okay, so we've taken the heat out of that debate. Before, I mean, I want to finish with just one or two brief questions, but I'm going to pass over to you for a little while, ladies and gentlemen, and we do have microphones somewhere. We will start with the lady in blue. If you could just wait until the microphone. I think it's right here behind you. Yeah, there we are. Just the lady in front of you there.
I'm just thinking about the similarities with conceptual art and contemporary music and the kind of increasing reliance on words in how we interpret meaning. So it seems like there's a bit of tension between Jeremy perhaps thinking that the food should just speak for itself and just be simply delicious, and maybe Andrew saying actually people want the words, they want something to cling on to. So how much do you think the words are important?
I mean, Jeremy, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Do you find difficulty in people understanding your food because the words are not there? They're floating around with no direction.
I kind of think of it like when you go to an art gallery. Sometimes you have some direction. There's a little card by the painting or the sculpture. Recently, when I've seen that, it's actually disturbed me a little bit because it's kind of derailed my sensitivity to whatever kind of emotional state the art piece is trying to project. And I think that's what I'm trying to do in the restaurant. I'm trying to like project like a series of like very deep, like strange feelings and memories and like ideas that just can't really be expressed into words because there's no like agenda in the dish to aspire to a specific cuisine or a specific nationality. The idea is to be original and beautiful and have integrity to the ingredients.
Words would be limiting.
Yeah, the words will be limited. So we keep the interaction very restrained and we allow the guests to just eat it.
Your homework is to go to Korea, see what emotions it stimulates, you know. Yes, the lady in the center there.
Actually, following on this subject, I think it has to be both, okay? Hassan Rubinstein's Mandarin Oriental was a very unremarkable dinner, but I still remember 3 years later, description of this roasted pineapples for 24 hours. Okay, yeah. I will go again, okay, because it was unremarkable, but I would remember a little restaurant which absolutely delicious seafood in Italy, okay, you know, and very memorable, okay. But talking about authenticity, okay, you know, look, I'm Ukrainian and I cook all various foods and I travel quite extensively. However, I'll get recently very upset. Last year,
You've got a question.
yes, question. The food have to look like a wash. It doesn't look like a dishwasher, okay? So if we're talking about particularly, well, Chinese food, you know, even with the references, it doesn't have to be so many spicy peppers to a accustomed to British
So
taste.
does it have to be set?
But it has to be something which actually relates you to dish that you either experienced before or would you like to experience as a new dish, okay?
Are there set rules under for particular dishes that you would never stray from your famous speaking up?
My answer has changed from last year.
Yeah,
It's something different. Is there a set? Most importantly, it's communication, right? So if I said that I was going to give you a Peking duck, a traditional Peking duck made in the most traditional way, which we used to do, and we put a lot of work in making sure that it was as true to Beijing in London as we can, then fine. Yes, it does need to be. But actually, cooking is a lot more than that. It is so much to do with communication. We were talking about words before. Words and communication are so important, which is why PR company is so important when you look in a restaurant nowadays. Words are also important, and we have the pedestal, and I can tell you now, I will give you some words today. It would be that my grandparents and my parents would trade in myself for fuchsia umut to tomorrow. Because they would have better conversation with them, they would love their deep understanding of history and culture and whatnot. And these are the and the beauty of what these guys do is that it brings meritocracy to the table. It's like you know more, so that makes you more legitimate. And to me, that's the truest thing.
I was going to say that these things evolve. So just for example, Shanghainese Western food 100 years ago looks ridiculous now. But now you can get totally contemporary Western food in Shanghai. Like 20 years ago, maybe you could get away with making a dishwasher borscht in London and no one would say anything. And that was okay because that's where we were at. Now if someone makes it and you complain and somebody writes an article, that will help to raise the standard of authenticity, to educate people, to expect more sort of loyalty to the culture and so on. So I think it's a process and it's important to remember that.
Not set in time. Yeah. Okay, other questions? Yes, gentleman at the back there.
Yeah, Fuchsia, you compared a couple of times the disrespect for Western food, or the bastardization of Western food in China, with the same thing with Westerners bastardizing or disrespecting Chinese food in the West. But something you didn't mention there that I think I'd be interested to know if you think this discerns the two is the power difference there in the West, where we've historically been really quite racist to Chinese people, taking their food and claiming it for our own. It's problematic. Whereas in the mainland, Western food, there's no structure there to oppress Westerners, so nobody's really hurt.
And I think you're right that the power thing is very key here. I mean, I think it's I think that it's in both cases it's a matter of education, but the issues are more serious in terms of. And I know that particularly with American Chinese food, that so many Asian Americans have. This is often talked about, the experience of having classmates being rude about their smelly food, and then they suddenly find it's a trendy thing among white people, and this feels really unfair. And and in America there is a very specific history of cultural exclusion and terrible, anti-Chinese movement, about 100 years ago. Yeah, so it is different, and I think it's fair to take that on board. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Anna at the back there.
I can probably talk quite loud enough.
No, you take the microphone just in case. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that question. It was what I was going to ask as well, very much about power, which I feel like hasn't been mentioned across this evening. And I want to just sort of further that on a little bit more and just ask this idea you asked on about how do we untangle the kind of anger and hate. And so this question about listening, but Fuchsia, your comment was very much about listening, that yes, of course we always listen, 100% agree, but it sounded like the job or the weight on the shoulders is on the people of colour to then soften their tone to be heard, and is that, as opposed to it actually needs to be, shouldn't it really be people who need to listen also need to then take responsibility to investigate and not be upset with the anger?
Yeah, I totally agree, but again, it's a process. And I just think that so many people were not aware of these issues until we've had these sort of things blowing up in the media. And I think that you have to, I think that it's highly unlikely that somebody's going to open a Pan-Asian restaurant in London with the same sort of tone-deaf PR or this, this clean-eating Chinese in New York, because these have taught people a lesson.
Yeah.
So I just think that you have to be sympathetic to the idea that it's an education process, and it's a process, and that it's actually more productive to try and, to take the sting out of it and to encourage people to think more about these issues. And I think that's happening.
Okay.
I don't know if you agree.
Okay, we've got time for one more question. Okay, just there. Yeah.
Hello everyone, hi, my name is Adam. Andrew in his talk, he mentioned the romanticism of eating something abroad and then trying to transport it back home, and it doesn't quite work. And I've taken tea bags abroad, it's kind of the reverse, and you try and make a cup of tea abroad and it never tastes the same as at home. So I was wondering, when you're trying to recreate dishes and flavours here that you've taken from China, maybe you've got authentic ingredients, but it still doesn't quite taste right. If you use, I guess, Western ingredients or foreign ingredients to try and achieve that flavour, does that make that food that you're trying to make less authentic?
It might also to do with the emotion of being in the place, but Andrew?
No. No, but I think it takes a long time to be at peace with yourself, to know that the answer is no. And the best analogy I can give you with regards to how chefs think is that there's a craze now that everyone wants to do everything themselves. They want to ferment everything themselves. They want to dry their own hams and cure their own hams. And I was talking to a really, really established chef who is a lot wiser than myself. And he said to me straight, he said, Andrew, this isn't about the end product, it's about the journey for the chef. And it's true, because the ham will never be as good as Iberico. But it's important for the chef to go through that journey to understand that. And for me, it's been a long journey to get to the point where, when I answer your question, it's certainly no.
Okay, one very final quick question from me to all of you. Given the difficulty of defining authenticity that we have been talking about, given the potential sensitivities of silos and stepping on each other's toes, should we forget about authenticity and be searching for something else? And should we use different language, something that's maybe culturally representative, or food that tells a story, or food that tastes great? Mokta?
I think authenticity is an empty tool. I don't think it's useful. I don't think it's useful to look at the power relations that we have. Let's face it, we know that they exist. It's almost like we're all scrabbling around, accusing each other of inauthentic moves in this situation, but actually the people at the top are largely commissioning as they would usually. And so what we need to do, I think, is to almost take authenticity as a kind of, it's an interesting conversational piece, but actually what we need to do is turn into commissions. I think of Andrew as a friend, but he's actually commissioned me to do research, right? So I think it's important to kind of look at your relationships and start acting like a commissioner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Briefly, Jeremy? Should we cast it as if you cast it aside?
No, I just get a bit confused sometimes as to what the end result will be of the discussion. Is there going to be some law that comes into place that says you can't be inspired by something, you can't recreate something, you can't react to something? I think it's important to be understanding and to be sensitive to other people in the way you deal with this process, but ultimately you can't really see the end result of the process.
I think that you should use it with a pinch of salt, that it is a useful concept, that it sometimes implies something frozen, which is very unhelpful. So I think you should use it while realising that it's slippery. And I think actually what's important and pertinent to the kind of political and power debates is actually integrity.
Yes.
And that it's using the term and doing what you do with integrity and respect. And that's actually more important.
Andrew, an outdated notion?
In the world of sex and season 2, it's about decorating your own way and with respect.
Respect and integrity. Thank you all very, very much indeed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. It's really food for thought on lots of levels, and I found a stimulating debate about where we're from, but actually where we are now, and that's really the most important thing this evening. I would like to just ask you to kindly just remain for 2 minutes while we just move some of the chairs in the other room to the side, make more space for us all, and then we'll be serving drinks and canapes around the room. So I just want to give one more big thank you to everybody on our panel and all of you for coming. But please just let's thank Mukta and Jeremy and Don and Fisha and Andrew and all of you. Thank you.